Hello everyone, this is Fahim from Tech Gaming Villa. I hope you all are well. This is another video about the Sony X90K and the Sony X90L. You see the left side is Sony X90K and the right side is Sony Bravia X90L. The Sony X90L, in fact, the cheapest model in Sony's 2023 TV range to feature the cognitive processor Exert chip. This latest version of which has a new Exert clear image feature that's really a suite of features that are designed to understand content type and quality and automatically upscale or upgrade accordingly. But X90K doesn't have this Exert clear image feature. This is the new feature added on 2023. On the panel side, the big upgrade is to the number of individual dimming zones that the direct full arrow backlight is split into. Sony never releases specific numbers for such things, but I understand that the X90L has more than double the dimming zones of last year's X90K. The backlight still uses standard LEDs rather than mini LEDs, so it will still have only a fraction of the dimming zones that feature in Samsung's top Neo QLED models. But this could still be a very useful upgrade to contrast all the same. The interface is Google Deep again, and it's comfortably better than it has ever been, particularly when it comes to personalized content recommendations. It's still not as sleek or responsive as LG's bespoke operating system, and it remains a jarring annoyance when you press the settings button while in an app and get thrown out of it and into Sony's own menu system. But once you are accustomed to its foibles, the user experience is decent. Google TV is also, of course, absolutely packed with apps. On top of the aforementioned Bravia Core app are the usual streaming suspects such as Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, and Apple TV, plus all of the UK touch-up apps. Format support is as it should be too. So all content that should be delivered in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. On the subject of HDR, HLG and HDR10 are supported on top of the aforementioned Dolby Vision, but HDR10 Plus isn't on board, as is the norm for Sony TVs. Dolby Vision dark mode, which I generally find to be too dark on Sony's OLEDs. The X90L is beautifully bright and punchy, delivering superb highlights such as the bright white clouds hanging over the menacing house on neighborhood street. Very bright colors such as the red of the stained glass window behind Stanley in his father's office, and as vibrant as they are from OLEDs such as the 8TL and LG C3. But they certainly don't look washed out in isolation, and the X90L is outright brighter than both of those models. Sony has done an excellent job of combining this brightness with the deep blacks, making for a very impactful picture overall, and also of combining these deep blacks with good shadow detail. And the LG C3 sample picks up even more fine detail from the dark corners of the movie, but you never feel as though you are missing out when viewing on the X90L. This is, of course, a backlit TV, and no amount of dimming zones is ever going to be capable of matching the pixel level contrast control of an OLED. But the X90L utilizes its hardware very impressively. The backlight is very even and consistent, without any of the patchiness or clouding of LCD TVs of old. The X90L and X90K both performs on gaming excellently. The X90L on 60 Hz 17.2 millisecond input lag, and on 120 Hz 8.9 millisecond, whether X90K 17.9 millisecond on 60 Hz and a 9.8 millisecond on 120 Hz. If you active the VLR on X90L 60 Hz 22.1 millisecond, whether X90K on 60 Hz 22.1 millisecond, the same, and 120 Hz 17.2 millisecond on X90L and X90K on the 17 millisecond, almost the same. So the gaming performance, I will say, is pretty similar, both X90K and X90L. And while the black level does raise a little in high contrast images, you rarely notice it when watching real content. The exception is when faced with a pretty small area of bright light in an otherwise pitch black screen. The final replicant text that remains at the bottom left of the black screen when the rest of Blade Runner 2049's intro text as faded creates a noticeable area of light. It's impressive how rare these instances are. Most Samsung QLEDs, even its flagship mini LED models, struggle with this whole wall of text, with obvious brightening and darkening of the backlight as the ratio of light to dark shifts, as well as a generally concave look to the image, thanks to the center being brighter than the edges. The Sony's delivery is far more consistent and far less jarring. Other than that, minor paling in the very brightest parts of the picture, the X90L's colors are brilliantly natural, not only in its Dolby Vision preset, but also when doing HDR in the TV's custom preset. Opt for this mode and you will get a really cinematically accurate performance with little to no further adjustment necessary. I do recommend adding a little bit of motion processing. Sony's motion flow technology is so good. You can add a point or two of smoothness and switch clarity to minimum to get a smoother, cleaner motion with no shimmer being added to complicated movement and none of the dreaded soap opera effect ever appearing. Everything I watched over days of testing is beautifully detailed and sharp without there being any sense of exaggeration or enhancement. And upscaling of non-4K content is handled very well indeed, with even an old episode of Bottom in HD look pretty clean and controlled. One flaw to LCD technology is that the X90L can't entirely escape its limited viewing angles. Colors retain a reasonable amount of vibrancy as you move out of the TV's sweet spot, but blacks fade quite quickly, and the workings of the backlight that are generally very well hidden become noticeable. Off-axis viewing isn't bad by LCD TV standards, but Samsung's top QLEDs are better in this regard, and OLEDs are almost entirely consistent regardless of the angle at which you are watching. On the other hand, if you see, it's possible to be less than perfect TV while offering excellent value for money. On 2023, there's the sort of television X90K. There are some shortcomings in its picture performance that have to be accommodated, but they are easily outnumbered by the things the Sony gets right. Black tones, white levels, and the contrast that result seem as good a place as any to start. X90K generates decently deep and nicely uniform black tones by the standards of backlit LED TVs, and thanks to quite bright, clean, and detailed white tones, it is capable of quite wide contrasts too. The blooming that occurs around bright objects on a dark background is fairly mild, but undeniable all the same, and the Sony's black turn quite readily to grays if you are sitting more than slightly off axis. In between these extremes, the Sony's vibrantly colored watch, but with enough subtlety and nuance to keep colors convincing and naturalistic. It's possible to overdrive things quite radically in the setup menus, of course, but almost all the X90K's picture presets keep the color palette the right side of vivid. As with black and white tones, there's a lot of detail of tone and temperature revealed. So even when the screen is occupied by just a few different colors, the variation within them is always apparent. Televised sport, for example, the benefits from these hours of insight. Some TVs will describe a pitch or field as a big block of uniformity, but the Sony is able to bring some light and shade into the equation too. It's particularly adept where skin tones and textures are concerned, with great fine detail retrieval, a stack of textural information, and the wide-ranging nature of the color palette, making the differences in shade and complexion from one person to the next completely obvious. Small, but the most trying circumstances, the X90K draws edges with assurance and handles motion equally confidently. It's possible to nudge the Sony to edge of its comfort zone with some properly slow panning shots, extensively depth of field or similarity testing content. But even then, the X90K is tenacious. Even when displaying televised football, when on-screen motion can be strongly at odds with the direction of camera movement, and where motion of various speeds is contained in a single shot, Sony resists smearing or obvious frame feeling gallantly. Switch to some PlayStation 5 content, and while game mode can worsen the Sony's previous smooth edge definitions just a little, the Sony remains colorful, high contrast, and packed with detail. The X90K accommodates all the PlayStation 5's clever features, and input lag of less than 9 milliseconds means its responses are razor sharp too. Low resolution content is handled with assurance, and unless you are determined to watch a lot of 4:3 or 1980s content. The Sony is confident upscaler. Detail levels drop away, of course, and its definition becomes less positive, but X90K is never less than watchable. So what's your thought? Which TV you want to buy? Please write in the comments below, the X90L or the X90K. It's up to your choice, but X90L definitely vibrant TV than X90K. If you like this video, please subscribe and press the bell icon for future notifications update. I have another channel named Awesome Tech Gaming Pro, where I upload similar kind of tech videos. Please visit this channel and subscribe for update. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.
To change up.